Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. SLIN, and welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about why the 6v6 metagame has gone stale. And if you're like me, you're probably not going into the next season thinking like, wow, I wonder what new and innovative and creative things the teams are going to show up with next season. It's just not going to happen. It's still going to be two scouts, two soldiers, a demo man, and a medic. That's just what's going to happen next season. And I want to get into that. I want to tell you guys like why that's the case. Because if you look back at the start of TF2, the original team compositions were a little bit different than what they were today. Like, yeah, the North American TF2 composition has generally remained the same. They originally believed, original TF2 players, they believed that Soldier was the strongest class. They had rockets that were just splash damage. It was just really good. And the Pocket Soldier actually had the best of both worlds because not only did he have a rocket launcher, but he also had a shotgun. So the North American scene has always believed deeply that you should just heal the Pocket Soldier and he will protect the rest of your team. He will create those openings. But in the European scene, it was actually very interesting to see because their mentality is very different. Their mentality was Demo Man is the strongest, most powerful damage dealing class in the game. We're going to put all of our resources into protecting our Demo Man, and the Demo Man is going to do damage and create openings and carry our team to victory. Everything else just ended up being a support role to that Demo Man. And the way that the scouts played in that format was to try and assassinate the Demo Man because scouts, they realized that scouts could get underneath stickies and like dodge the Demo Man's damage dealing abilities. So like the scouts would try and get in and assassinate the Demo Man. And teams actually started running heavies to counter the scouts that were trying to kill the Dome Man. That was the most popular team composition in Europe, like the one done by like Four Kings and those teams back in the day, where it's like medic, Demo Man, heavy, scout, two soldiers, because the soldiers are the strong class in that game. And it was just like a way different way of thinking about the game, right? You just think back and you're like, what were they thinking? But that death ball, it was like the Demo Man heavy death ball moving around together. They just an unpenetrable force that you just couldn't stop. That was the way that they played the game for a long time. And it's been really fun for a guy like me who's been around TF2 for as long as I have to see the game sort of develop and morph and watch the metagame grow. But it's gotten to the point where a lot of people are frustrated with the state that the TF2 metagame is in. And from a lot of outsiders, and I've seen this so many times on the forums where people are just like, those sixes players, they don't like change. They don't really like anything that interferes with their game. They don't like changing the status quo. They don't want to play with the new weapons. They're boring people. They just want to play their own game, and they have no interest in anything that will change their precious game. And to a certain extent, they're actually right. But it's only part of the truth. I think there's a lot of contributing factors to that. But that is definitely like a mentality that a lot of people have is like, wow, sixes players, don't they don't like anything that interferes with that holy trinity, that team comp they have of two scouts, demo man, medic, and two soldiers. And I want to start by saying that like the reason why these team compositions are viable is due to the game design. So a lot of games will feature sort of two groups of classes. You'll have one group which is really strong and slow, and you'll have this other group that's faster, more mobile, but does less damage. And that's a really common theme in MMOs, where it's just like this range class. It's got better positioning, but it does less damage. So it's all on the melee class. It's all about the slower classes to catch up to the range classes and try and take them down. And unfortunately, when you design a game like that, you can never make the slower defenses, you can never make them like too strong, because if you were to give them more mobility, then like why would anyone play this other class which is based around mobility? If you gave this class like any sort of benefit besides being just straight up stronger, like obviously if you like made them like one hit KO, like it wouldn't really be much of a game. It would just kind of be like, well, you're done. So like you can't never make them too powerful. But if any other benefit that you give this group, this melee group, this slow group, it breaks the game. It just makes the game really slow. Everyone just plays the really strong turtley classes, and then it's like these tanks just slowly moving around the map, right? Like imagine just a team of 6-on-6 heavies just like slowly moving around the map. That would be boring. So naturally, in a lot of these games, especially as you progress up the ranks, the teams will favor mobility over damage because you can always focus fire to get the damage that you need, but mobility, having the rotations and the movement, the ability to outmaneuver the slower, stronger team comps actually ends up making your team better. And that is why Soldier, Scout, Demo Man, Medic has been good for so long, because the slowest class on that team is the medic. The scouts are faster than the medics. The soldiers can rocket jump. The demo man can rocket jump or sticky jump. The only reason why you have medics is because there's limited health packs on the map, and Uber is just really good at breaking chokeholds. So these mobility comps have been popular in TF2 for so long, it actually gets kind of boring. I personally, like I said, I never wonder what innovative and creative things the teams are going to bring next season. The most innovative things that we'll see are like a new roamer rollout to middle, or and it's not even like that crazy. It's like, instead of going to this shack, he actually goes to this shack, or it's like, oh, this time instead of going to their kitchen, he's gonna go to his own kitchen. Like it's nothing mind blowing, right? You're not gonna see like these like double pyro strats to mid, that you like these weird strategies, and it is the fault of the competitive players to a certain extent. Like I said, the way that the classes are designed themselves cannot be helped. Ultimately, it's on the developers to change the class design, but the weapon design, that's a different story, because the competitive players have actually had a lot of impact on the weapons within the competitive scene. We've banned weapons all the freaking time, and part of the reason that they get banned is because they're disruptive in the middle of a season. Like, you don't, if you're spending all this time practicing given a certain rule set, you don't want a new weapon to come in there and just be like, well, suddenly everything has changed. And I do remember that happening one season, actually, when the quick fix was buffed, because it was like a month before LAN, and now all the teams are like, wow, we have to completely adapt to this new style, because the quick fix changes the way that the game is played completely. And it does create problems. So the competitive mindset, the way that the admins and the community has handled weapon bans in sixes, is to say, look, if a new weapon gets added to the game, we're just going to keep it banned. That'll give us time to play test it, and then we'll vote on it next season. It was actually a really good system for a long time, and it was helpful that the developers were cooperative. They would release weapons slowly and in like small numbers, because every time they released an update, like Meet the Pyro or Meet the Heavy, they always had to like have like a whole big like fanfare thing with it. So there was a lot of time between updates. There was a lot of time between patches. So every time you saw new weapons, it was like a group of like 4 or 5 weapons. There wasn't too many weapons. So like, then you'd create a post on the forums, and everyone would talk about it for a week and a half and be like, weigh in on this. Like, what do you think about these weapons? And are these weapons good or not? And then you'd have like a poll on the ESEA forums where people were like, okay, I'm going to vote for this weapon, just like you'd vote for maps. Like, okay, this one's in, this one's out. And then they tally them up and see which ones are the right weapons that they're going to keep for next season, which ones they're going to toss out. It was a good system. They ultimately moved away from that system, though, because a lot of the community felt that the lower level players didn't really understand the game, and that they weren't really qualified to make voting decisions on massively impactful weapons. I don't know why. I don't understand the justification behind that, but they decided, okay, we're only going to let the team captains from the top invite teams, the top 9 teams in North America, only the invite captains will choose the weapon pick and bans, and we're just going to let them decide, because they're qualified, they understand the game the best, and they are the ones that understand the game well enough to decide for everyone else what weapons should be and shouldn't be allowed. So that was the old system. Now we have this sort of matchmaking thing coming out, and in the last 4 or 5 months, you've been seeing a lot of patch changes and different weapons being altered at an alarming rate. It was slower before, but now, like, if you look at that Tough Break update that just came out a month ago, it's like, whoa, the patch notes are huge. They changed everything. And if you're a team captain, I can just imagine you sitting there going like, dude, how am I possibly going to have time to play test like 100 weapons? Like, this is just going to be impossible. And to be honest, the competitive community's just gotten lazy about it. They're like, look, we're not going to even bother. Like, screw that. I'm still having fun with whatever we have. So why do we need these other weapons? Let's just keep everything banned, and we'll just keep playing the game we've been playing for a long time. So that's what I was saying earlier, is like that criticism that the Sixes players just keep the status quo. It's actually really true. Like, the Sixes players, they're just like, yeah, there's so many weapons being changed right now. Like, how can I possibly evaluate everything? So screw it. Let's just keep playing our game. And so there's that. And then there's also this, if you think about it too, the invite teams, giving them all the power is actually kind of a terrible idea, because the invite teams are obligated to protect themselves. Think about it. They want to stay at the top of the game. They have no interest in moving down and like not being at the top of the game. And if the game is working right now for them to be at the top of the game, then why should they change anything? They should just try and keep all the weapons the exact same way, so that way they can stay at the top of the game. Brilliant. And so unfortunately for us, we've handed the power to the wrong people. So what used to be a community decision of, okay, which weapon should we ban, is now just like, I don't even see that post on the forums anymore. I don't see anyone posting, having a discussion saying, they made huge changes to these weapons. Do you think we should allow them in the game now? Like, no one even cares anymore. It's just like, yeah, looks like they didn't break any of the weapons that are currently in the game, so good to go. And if it's like not massively game breaking, no one really gives a crap about it. So I think that's a major problem. And if you guys are playing competitively, or even if you're not and you're just looking at the game, you're just like, wow, like what are we supposed to do here? It's tough. Like, this doesn't seem to have any sort of end. Like, Valve is going to continue updating weapons and changing weapons and adding new stuff to the game, and the invite teams and then all the players are just gonna be like, yeah, screw it, we don't need those, just ban everything. So that's never gonna end. And there is this thing though, actually, there is hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. The developers are integrating matchmaking into TF2, and if the competitive scene wants to assimilate into the rest of TF2, they're going to have to adopt the game that the developers are creating. So if the developers say jump, we just say how high. It's like, if they're gonna unban all the weapons, great, let's unban all the weapons. If they're gonna unlock all the class limits, all right, I guess we'll just play with no class limits. And that's awesome, actually, because that hands the power back to the developers. Think about it. The power was in the hands of the competitive players. We're just gonna ban everything. We're just gonna make the game the way we want it. Now it's like the developers have all the control. We have to do what the developers want because we want to play the same game that everyone else is playing now that matchmaking is integrated. So the developers are the ones who decide these weapons will be tweaked. The developers will be the ones to decide, okay, these classes will be limited, these classes won't be limited, and they'll make a decision regarding the game modes and the maps that we end up playing. Pretty big deal, actually. I think the developers, from my personal opinion, is that the developers are trying to change the game for the positive. They're trying to make the game good for us. They're trying to influence the game in a positive way. I think a lot of the weapon changes that they've been making recently have actually been really good. They've actually balanced a lot of the weapons. We just haven't seen people trying them out yet, but I'm sure that these weapons are a lot better than they were before. I would say that, like, the developers also have a lot of tools at their disposal that help them make decisions regarding weapon balances and changes. Like, when you think about it, they have the stats as to what percentage of players are using X weapon. Like, what percentage of players are using the scattergun? What percentage of players are using the atomizer? What percentage of players are using the Vitasaw? This is good stuff to know, because they can use that. If certain weapons are seeing way too much use, it could be that, yes, the game is free to play and people only have access to stock weapons, but it could also be, hey, look, like, the people who are playing matchmaking are clearly only using these loadouts, so there might be reasons for that. They might be too overpowered. Maybe there might be problems with the other weapons that need to be tweaked. And it allows the developers to design the game that they want to design, which I am all for. And more importantly and more excitingly, I want to see some new stuff in the game. I want to see teams bringing in fresh ideas and new concepts and new team compositions and new loadouts and going, look, guys, we got the secret strategy, and boom, we're gonna bust it out at the playoffs to, like, surprise everyone and win games. Because right now I'm not seeing those surprises, and as a caster, I don't want to be sitting here being bored, just being like, yeah, this is the same old shit that we see every season. Like, I want to see news and interesting things. I want to see cheese strats. Like, in StarCraft, you have these cheese strats where you, like, do, like, a photon cannon rush or, like, a zergling rush. Like, these are strategies that are not successful if you run them every single time, but, like, if you just sneak it in there and surprise the enemy team, just like, well, bam, I'm gonna put a pylon, I'm gonna put a sentry, like a photon cannon in your base. What are you gonna do about it? It's like, that's awesome, that's so cool. Like, you totally caught them off guard. This is totally preventable, but you cheese the shit out of them, and, like, this is awesome. I can't wait to see you guys do this again. That's exciting. I want to see teams come with interesting, new, creative strategies. I want to see things mixed up a little bit, because preserving the status quo is just keeping the same old game that we've been playing for. Look back at it. We've been playing the same game for years now. It needs to be changed. I want to see something different. I can't wait to see what integrated matchmaking brings to the community, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about weapon balance and changes and what's coming in the future. But yeah, until then, see you on the next video.